And Osho,
Exactly.
is Osho
OSHA.
involved? No, Osho
OSHA?
is a cult
OSHA?
leader. OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health Administration, I think.
Probably, yeah.
Slay.
Osho.
Yeah, they just tell you uplifting proverbs if you get injured at work.
Yeah, right? That's sometimes what you need.
The broken vessel repaired with gold is more
Mm.
valuable than the vessel that's never been broken.
Do you feel that healing light? Do you feel it?
Reiki, ASMR.
I think that social workers and kind of the nonprofit sector and the additional services for the community to provide is like something that's absolutely necessary for functionality in American society. We wish the cities could do it all, but they most of the time cannot.
DoorDash and Slash. It's the latest.
Why do we use humor for trauma, you guys?
Grubhub and Mug. You haven't heard of it?
I'm done.
I think I saw a meme earlier today where they just call it spicy memory, not trauma.
Oh yeah, spicy memory.
Blocked Deborah from even coming into my wing of the hospital.
Blocked.
That's such a bad bitch move. You can't even come in this wing. You can't even come in. You can't even see him.
Yeah, and if you get, like I said, if you get off of it and you still try to sue them, then the medical people say that it's like insurance fraud.
And then you're getting sued.
Yeah, literally.
Like,
so
Uno reverse.
That is so fucked.
If you be bleedy, conic sheedy.
Literally. So to any current social worker, you're a godsend. You do hard work, but also at the same time, make sure that you feel safe because 90% of the clients at my organization, they loved us and were very sweet to us, but they also had heinous crimes.
I didn't get the letters. I just wrote other doctor panel 5.
It was the Q review or the other kind of review.
A bunch of, I'm going to say it, likely cis white old men getting together deciding your fucking future.
Well, what I was thinking was if I were an attorney, I would be like, okay, well, if we can get the second option where we're forcing a panel, we simply hire one of our doctors to go there and neg their case the whole time. So I was thinking that might be why it's a benefit.
Megan doesn't work in court, and that's all totally illegal what you just said. Okay, now can we be workers' comp labor board superintendents? And I take a 9 because we shouldn't be lawyers yet, Bex, but we're close.
Not yet, but once we figure out our client base, we're going to be unstoppable.
Email us at we'reexpertspod.
We will represent you in a court of law. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. We're experts now. A little bit closer every week. You know, we just try our best every week to learn something new or at least ask a couple questions. The first question, who am I? I'm your co-host, Rebecca.
And who am I? No one ever knows. It is me. It is Jackie.
Ooh, mysterious goblin vibes. Loving her.
We're just pulling out a little my D&D background here.
Yeah. Did you see the D&D movie?
I actually did. It was really cute because I was post-surgery and I really wanted to see it. And so my brother and I got takeout and he watched it with me. And I was like, I see the gelatinous cube. I see the mimic.
Adorable.
I loved it. Did you see it?
I strongly considered watching it. And then I saw the runtime was 2.5 hours. But every other movie that I looked at was 2 hours. So at that point, I just gave up and I think I watched I watched anime. Yeah. I watched a TV show.
I'm going
to watch it.
I'm more of a TV watcher than a movie watcher. So as you know this, it is kind of hard to get me to watch a movie sometimes unless I'm sleepy.
It's cozy. Yeah, cozy vibes.
I don't know why I'm doing the voices today, but what have you been up to?
Well, I've been getting into some amateur alerts as I always am. Across the desk of my agent came a little audition and that's actually way too much of an overstatement. It was a background job, which requires no third-party agencies whatsoever. If you got a pulse, they want you on set. And this was before the strike for anybody, watching the calendar here in Los Angeles. I wasn't crossing any picket lines. But which Jackie, you may not know, the strike is still going strong here in Los Angeles. So anytime you get in your car, you're under threat of having to honk for someone with a poster board and a permanent marker.
Well, I didn't know it was happening, and you let me know that it was happening. So I do, in fact, know. And thank you for letting me know that it is still happening. And be out there fighting the good fight, folks.
I am intimidated by the honks. I hate to honk, and I'm doing it for them. So that shows you. But so before all this, I did a little background job, and I booked it, and it was a great little paycheck for the day. I rubbing the elbows with the stars. We were supposed to. Okay, so I saw the name of the role, and I was like, how do I prepare for this very important background acting role where my face will probably be blurry the whole time? I saw the role name was shower guest, and I was like, oh my god, I'm so excited! This is for a brand new TV show with one of my comedy idols. I'm probably gonna be like in a shower scene where he like walks in on me in a shower. Like that's gonna be like, am I gonna have a towel? Will there be an intimacy coordinator? Like, should I, get a tan and a wax? Like, what are we doing here? And then the wardrobe just said to bring all white. So I was like, okay, great. This is like, maybe that's
White
just
towel.
like my base layer. Yeah. I'm glad I didn't show up in a white towel because after I told you, you were like, oh, do you mean like a bridal shower guest for the bride or the groom? And I think that's what you said. We're like, oh, for the bride or the groom. And then I put it together. And I was not about
for the bride or the baby, but close.
Oh,
there's no groom shower, but there are baby showers.
Why not? Why are there no groom showers?
They get a bachelor party and then they need a shower. So,
but then we also get a bachelorette party, which really isn't kind of the same thing. It's kind of, I don't know. It's a weird, gross. All of it's weird.
A lot of wooing.
Muck.
Yeah. A lot of wooing, and you apparently have to go to Nashville to do it now. But
we should plan a trip to Nashville.
We should plan a trip to Nashville. We got a lot of trips planned, though. So.
Okay. So, yeah, I did show up on set, and it was indeed a baby shower.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and I love how it was a baby shower, and you didn't even consider that was one of the showers that it could have been.
Yeah. No. I rarely think of babies.
Yeah,
don't like to do it. But yeah, that was a fun day, and I'm glad
I'm glad you didn't
learned
show
a little
up naked.
Something. It's like a nightmare. Or, didn't have to wake up early to shave. So that was, I lucked out there.
Well, that is always a win. Any day that I don't have to wake up early, especially to shave, is a win for me. Dear Lord.
Well, have you been over in your world? What topics are going in your brain?
I always like to just keep it fresh, keep it clean in the shower and out. And I have a guest that's near and dear to me as well. I always pick my faves peoples. That's why you get like the showcase of all the awesomeness all the time. And they, I'll let them share of their experience in itself, but what I'm going to have them that led to this, but what I'm going to have them talk about today is getting through the workers' comp process, right? When you go into the doctors and they're like, was this a work-related thing? And you got to say no all the time. I've always wondered what happens if you say yes, and what kind of fun paperwork are you going to give me? And I think this is something we all pay if you're a U.S. citizen, and I guess maybe that's a great place to start. If you're not from the U.S., we have workers' comp in the United States. If you're a U.S. citizen, you pay into this with your paycheck. It's part of your taxes and all of that other good stuff that comes out of your paycheck and the taxes we pay every year. That fund goes to something, which is when you get hurt while working, you have compensation. Now, how you get that, what kind of hurt, and how that all works is kind of a mystery to anyone who's never been through it. And
yeah, I mean, I probably could have used some if I'd shown up to set with a towel on, a little slip and fall, if you know what I mean. Osho.
Exactly.
Is OSHA involved? No, Osho is a cult leader. OSHA, Occupational Safety and Health Administration, I think.
Probably, yeah.
Slay.
Osho.
Yeah, they just tell you uplifting proverbs if you get injured at work.
Yeah. much you need.
The broken vessel repaired with gold is more
Mm.
valuable than the vessel that's never been broken.
Do you feel that healing light? Do you feel it?
Reiki, ASMR, ASMR. I imagine that. Okay, so is workers' comp? So you're saying it's some sort of like government tax agency related, kind of like it's in your taxes already?
I believe so. Like, I believe that we pay into workers' comp. Like, or if it's not us, our employers pay into workers' comp every year. And so
Jupiter's about to get some workers' comp falling from this balcony right now.
I know he's like looking over it often.
Oh,
Jupiter. Hold on 1 second.
Wow, that actually worked.
Yeah, they just want to see that you'll actually get your fat ass up.
Yeah, they're like an Apple alert or something. You know, like you haven't stood up in 30 minutes.
That's what he is doing, jerk.
I do find my cat does that. She meows, and then when I go move towards her, she moves 2 steps back, and I'm like, "Where are you leading me? Is this a?"
That's because she's a literal representation of you.
Okay. No. Didn't expect that to be so accurate.
Okay, so I'm pretty sure we pay into workers' comp already. Like, it's part. I like, you know how it's like Social Security Administration, federal taxes, California taxes.
So it's a bureau. It's a government. It's
Workers
like can you work for the DMV or something? You know, is it like a body or is it?
I think it's like a body.
Okay.
It's a hottie with a body.
Getting naughty with Pilates.
They're here to help you with your body. And so I think it's like everyone pays into it, and then say you go into work tomorrow, and let's say something like really easy, like you slip and fall, you sprain your ankle. So what I do know is that they're there to like pay your doctor's bills, right? Like if you got hurt at work, you should get compensation for that, right?
Because your employer's at fault for creating the work situation, the work conditions.
I don't know if it actually has to be somebody's at fault, right? Because I think if somebody's at fault, that's when you can maybe sue somebody.
Oh, right.
But this is like Social Security Administration. So like Social Security is for people who are too sick to work, right? So they come in once you have been shown that you are too sick and that you'll never be able to work. They take basically like your highest 3/4 incomes over the last 6 years, and then you get a percentage of that. And so that's how Social Security disability works. So for, I think, workman's comp, you get injured at the workplace regardless of whose fault it is, like kind of like insurance, right?
Yeah.
So you got hurt at work, you sprained your ankle. Maybe you weren't even at your work site. Like maybe you're somebody who goes door to door and you're a salesman, but you were working while it happened. And that I don't think your work pays for it. Like if you get sick and like fall, in this example, you sprain your ankle and you have to go to the doctor, I don't think your work pays that. The workers' comp people pay that.
I see. Okay, interesting. I'm always curious about the thing that started the thing, you know? So was there like a strike, you know, a workers' strike or like a union thing or like did miners unionize or something?
So strikes or that type of things would have changed like the legalities or like individual businesses, how they're run, right? I imagine in this sense, it must have been part of like the welfare package, right? Of here, so here's
FDR.
I actually don't know who implemented all of that. I think it's
one of the Roosevelts.
I think it comes in different times. Like I think he did Social Security, and I don't know where welfare came in. I actually probably the 1920s, so maybe similar times, 30s. I don't know. So you have Social Security disability. I am unable to work because I am too ill, but I am an American citizen who has worked before I got sick. You have welfare. I am an American citizen. I am unable to work for certain reasons, like maybe you're a parent and you have too many kids, so you can't hold down a job. And and raise your children. I'm not actually sure what qualifies you for welfare, but I know it's not that you're disabled, right? Because if you were disabled, you'd be on Social Security disability. And then workers' comp is for people who are short term. Like, this is not disability, because if you were long term injured from your job, then you would go on Social Security disability over a time. So I got this is all my theories. I've gotten injured. I know it's like I've gotten injured at work, and maybe I'm going to be out for a week, right? So do they pay your salary to you, or is it on your job? I know that they pay for your like hospital stays or like bills and stuff like that, but
you're saying it came out all as a package deal, that all those three kind of entities emerged at once. Or I wonder if there was one that came before the other, or like just at what period in history our countries started doing all these various things, and then what the responsibility is of employers. Like, do you have to have workers comp to exist as like a business?
Yes, you do. Like, I do think that. So I don't think they all came as one package. I think they are all part of the same package that has been
Evolving.
added to and removed. Like, right, like some things were more progressive and have been repealed back. Some things were more conservative. We've added to it. So I think they're part of like the same world of human welfare. And how do we take care of all of our citizens? So I think they come out all the same world. I don't think our expert is going to be able to answer these questions.
Yeah, true.
We might want to do I want to do a little bit of background.
It's not a constitutional law podcast, this episode.
But I think he went through this experience of like, what is it like? So I imagine that like you have to do a shit ton of paperwork.
Yeah.
Right? So you probably.
And I wonder if there's anything when you start a job that maybe you could sign or accidentally sign that would prevent you from. No, it would all just help you, right? It would all just be like, I'm covered by this and have the right to ask for this or that.
You would want that. And I think that they probably come in as like representatives, because I imagine in like some cases there might be a potential for a lawsuit, right? So maybe you are somebody who, like me, travels a lot, and maybe I am on site for something and I'm staying in a hotel, and the hotel has done something that is illegal, or I could sue them for.
Yeah.
Now, maybe workman's comp in that scenario would come in as like my advocate, and they would help me pay my bills, but then try to get the hotel to reimburse them because they were actually liable for my injuries or something like that. Right? I think workers' comp is meant to be kind of like on your side and like with you and your agency, to my understanding. I might be totally wrong here.
But you'd probably want to get your hands on, any paperwork that was pertinent to your hiring and your employment, and then getting in touch with a representative, which I'm, probably assuming that they, once it's reported, they probably reach out to you. Maybe you have to reach out to them.
Well, I wonder if the trigger is going to the hospital, right? Because that's where I know they like ask you that all the time. So maybe if you say yes when they say, were you injured at work? Maybe they pull somebody in from workers' comp and they come and talk to you. Maybe they got like somebody hanging out at the hospital.
I mean, that'd be good to know, because you wouldn't want to, miss a step. And then once you're already at the hospital, they're like, oh, you didn't report this. We don't you want to make sure you get those order of operations right. Because I know documentation, especially with like injuries, is so important. But
and works can also, like, there are tons of workplaces, and I'm not saying this about my friend's past employer at all, but works can sometimes not want to help people, right? Like, they might be doing something under the table really shady, and they don't want to have people looking at their papers. They might be like, no, you had this injury beforehand.
Yeah, or catch a call from the health inspector or something, or
so like I think that's also the possibility where you're like, you need to get probably documentation that it happened at work, in case your employer is going to say like, no, you came into work that day with that sprained ankle.
I actually have seen employer, like I worked at a kitchen and someone got a burn, and I remember I asked my manager for something. He's like, hold on 1 second, I'll be right back. I got to go write up a injury report for so-and-so in the kitchen, So you would hope that they do that kind of proactive thing and are just trained to do it automatically, versus if you don't get it, and then maybe the next manager you're working with is suspicious that everyone's trying to call out sick and fake sprained ankles. And
Well, and this is like a really like lesson learned when my younger years. I had one of the reasons I got sick in my 20s was because I had a dental procedure go horribly wrong.
Hmm.
And then I was given
A
nerve
nightmare.
damage.
Oh, that's
Yeah, and
nightmare level.
I was on antibiotics for over 6 months. It basically decimated my immune system. There was all these problems. In that case, I'm not a litigious person at all. But at that case, like knowing what I know now, that person took away my 20s. Honestly, like that person took away from 23 to, really like 29 from me. Because of a choice of thinking that you could do something. But in that example, dental malpractice is one of the hardest things to prove. And when I went and talked to a lawyer, they said, you're going to have to prove that you didn't have the nerve damage before. And how do you prove that, right? Like, I don't go in and get my nerves tested in my jaw, right?
Listen, these jaw nerves were working fine. I can give you a couple references, okay?
Right? So like I think it's like one of those things where like people can totally lie and say like, "Oh, well you're going to have to prove that it wasn't that way in the beginning."
Yeah.
How do you
The burden
prove?
of proof is on you, which is so
Mhm.
frustrating.
So I think that's another thing you have to protect yourself from in these cases is, I've had employers who were not great in the past. They were not protecting me, and I learned document everything, take notes on everything, protect yourself. Because I think there are bad people out there. There's also a ton of really great employers that if you get injured, they're like, we just want to help you and make sure that you're comfortable and safe and
Yeah.
have everything you need.
Yeah, because that's their whole purpose. That's part of their training, their whole package as a manager, as an employer, as an administrator. That should be something they're concerned with and aware of. So hopefully they're also your ally. And then I guess it's like, do you want to go back to work there? Do you want to look for a new line of work? Or was this just like an accident, like literally tripped and fell on the way to the printer or whatever,
Yeah.
And do you need accommodations getting back to work or...
And so I don't know if workman's comp helps with any of that, actually. I have no idea like what level of assistance they give you, because I do think like kind of going back to the administrator should be helping you. I think workman's comp is they come in for when that person is not on your side or when you're having struggles with them. I think that's a big part of their role of facilitating that. Now, how far that facilitation goes, like, does it just last through the injury and the care to the injury? Or is there like occupational therapy is kind of what you were talking about, like going back to your job, getting back into it? Like, is there help with long term helping you get to that place?
Yeah, if you had to go to physical therapy or something like that. Yeah, I wonder how far those concessions go.
Well, even occupational therapy is like helping somebody like relearn the way that they live their lives after like a massive physical trauma. So sometimes it's not even like the physical part. There's plenty of things like when you get injured, there's can be trauma with that as well, mental trauma. That I think as a society, we were talking about this in a different episode of the Reagan era of shutting things down. As a society, I think we haven't paid attention to the mental effects of injuries or things happening at work. But kind of like you were saying, would you even want to go back? Like, did it cause you a level of trauma? Like, let's talk about the real like thing that's happening a lot nowadays, like shootings. There's all sorts of like active shooting problems in this country right now. And so that's another thing. If that happened at your workplace, would you ever be able to go back? I don't know if I could.
I don't know if that falls under workman's comp. Maybe if you're reloading your automatically assigned teacher's handgun and
No, but if you're at
misfires.
work, that's what I mean. It's not all at schools. There's plenty of workplaces where there's been shooters as well. And if you're working, I feel like workman's comp probably has to help you through that.
Really? That
If you're
wouldn't be...
working, yeah, at the time.
That's so bizarre. I mean, yeah, that's a sort of fresh new hellscape. I haven't fully contemplated.
No, when people talk about going to school nowadays as a kid, I cannot even imagine. Like, I remember earthquake drills as a kid and living in California. Like, we all had to learn to like get under our desks. So just
Didn't grow up in California, so didn't have to do that. But we had to learn the boot, scoot, and boogie. So there was a lot of trauma that they gave us in school. Line dancing.
Okay. I was was like, is that for like hurricanes?
That's
like...
for an achy breaky heart. That is the cure to an achy breaky heart, is a 2-step. But, proud of us for bringing up the hot button issues here on the workers' comp episode. Really hope our guest is in for this roller coaster. And of course, they're going to be sharing their personal experience with us. So that we expect them to be an expert on no more than that. That is, plenty. And I hope they've got some tips and tricks, at least, things that they learned in their personal journey about things you want to know before you go into it. I mean, obviously not before once it happens. But I'm imagining the quicker you can act on some things, it might really help you out.
Okay, listeners, do you hear that? If you get hurt at work, immediately go re-listen to this episode.
And that take down step one.
Fastidious notes. Just get it all.
First, you got to upvote it on YouTube. That's going to be very key to your workman's comp claim.
Okay, so this is another subject where we really knew nothing about it. We didn't even know what kind of agency or bureau it is. We don't know exactly what they do other than help you when you get hurt on the job. Like, what happens? Like, do they help you if you got hurt and it affects your job? Like, what if I'm a mechanic and I need both hands and I lost a hand?
Oh, God.
But it happened off of work. Do they help me? Do they comp my work even though I wasn't at work? So, again, we know nothing about this.
You got to change jobs at that point. I also think there's a few things we could look into regarding certain car services and delivery services, things that like if you get into an accident while you're driving, sometimes they don't cover those things.
Because you're a contractor. Mm-hmm. Are you paying into workman's comp then?
Okay. So contractors might not come with benefits.
I don't know. And I don't think our expert's going to know. But you know what? We will consider doing some research before part 2 of this episode. And maybe we'll have some information. But more than likely, yeah, we got nothing. We know nothing. What is workman's comp? No one knows.
May we learn to be prepared. May the worst never happen, but if it does, may we be prepared.
May we be experts.
May we. Welcome back to the pod. Hope you didn't have any slip and falls while we were out. But if you did, nice trip. See you next fall. This is the episode to listen to. We've got the inside scoop. Jackie, over to you.
Over to me. Over here, Jackie, reporting on the street.
Live on the scene.
I'm seeing, I'm believing. Actually, this is
listening, learning.
Let's not go too far with the learning. This week we have one of my favorite humans. I know I say that all the time, but this one really is. This is a good friend of mine, Alex. We met a few years ago. Alex has experience in this realm, and yeah, Alex, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and your experience?
Hello, everybody. My name is Alex. Let's see. Who am I? I'm a young, happy-go-lucky, always wanted to do anything type of person. Unfortunately, I am pretty well knowledgeable in this field, not because I'm like some fancy lawyer that gets like millions of dollars helping people with workers' comp. I was actually
tell us how you feel about it.
client, and it's something that I feel like is really interesting because I learned a lot more about like all legal processes going through this case than honestly like even like any school or just anything along those lines. I learned a lot more going through this process than I expected. And it's very complicated. It's almost like when you try to like change, it's 10 times more complicated than like trying to change your name. But it's something that I think everybody should know a little bit more knowledge on.
I mean, you're right. Like knowing what you're going to be up against in the world is totally helpful. Early in my career, totally different scenario, didn't know how to protect myself in a more HR situation, and not having that information really kind of put me in a position that wasn't great. Like having this information, being able to kind of go through life and feel that you have control over your scenarios and what happens and you know what to do is just really, really empowering to most people.
And have you gone through the name change process as well? Was that a subtle hint drop, or you've had exposure to at least that level of bureaucracy? That's
Well,
not
I
bureaucracy. It's
did
something
attempt a
else.
name change thing, but then a family member actually told me like the implications of how my name is spelt, and that's why I kept it the way it did.
Oh.
My parents accidentally put an S in Alexander when they spelt it. Um and it makes a Z sound, but then short come to find out from like my great aunt on like my mom's side who is German, it makes a Z sound in German. So they spelt it in American proper, well, in German properly, but wrong in American or English.
So it's kind of like, oh, this is a bit of a culture to keep around.
Yeah, exactly. So I
Okay.
kept it out as I did once I found out that family little information. But yes, workers' comp is at least 10 times harder than trying to change your name.
We're just using that as the marker to compare other things too.
Yeah.
I gotta ask, how did Rebecca and I do on our guesses on how the system works?
Yeah, so I honestly think you guys, the things that you talked about, knew on a better scale than most people I've talked about or talked to this about. So I'd probably give you guys like a 7.22225, but like not
Nice,
at seven
nice.
and a third, but like slightly underneath.
Not even at 7.25. We're like just
Two repeating.
well, at least we're on the board. We're on the 7 board up here. I will take that. That's better than
Yeah.
we've started in most scenarios. So I'll take it.
Yeah, we might have a new side hustle on our hands here.
Yes, workers' comp consulting. Are we consulting now?
Or are we assaulting?
No, we're not assaulting.
No.
Okay, Alex, so why don't we start at the beginning wherever that may be for you?
Yeah, okay. So, one disclaimer I do want to kind of shoot out before we start this discussion is that workers' comp is not the same thing state by state. They have completely different regulatory rules for every single state. Some cities and counties even get more specific than their state laws do. But for the most part, a lot of cities and counties don't have specific laws. Prices and coverage areas are completely different, and so on and so on. Along with the type of injury that you receive while working. And so if you've experienced this before and you had a completely different experience than I did, that's totally normal, because it's literally a very case by case situation. So don't think that I am like the almighty knowing god of workers' comp, but I do know a lot about the process in general. And so to start off, let's see. I was originally, so my experience was a violent crime while in the workplace. And just a little trigger warning, sensitive content, I was a social worker at one point, aiding homeless youth. And I was actually stabbed by one of my clients in like the first 15 minutes of my workday. And in that experience, I realized I was stabbed. I freak out because who wouldn't? Police are called, ambulance are called. They pick me up, and I'm taken off to the hospital. And in that crazy moment, that's kind of where this entire process started. And one thing that I can say, going through my experience at least, if you are a victim or a person involved with a work-related accident or injury, if you think that your work was at wrongdoing, the first thing you need to do, even before like you call your family, is you need to call an attorney. I found out that extremely actually ended up saving my entire case and made my stuff and my experience way smoother because because I did. My good friend was a workers' comp attorney. And I literally, I wake up, I had surgery. My right lung had collapsed from the experience.
Oh God,
they had
that's
to
intense.
they had to go through my chest. It was a pretty gruesome experience. But so I
and
wake
this was
up,
all before lunch.
Oh yeah, this was at like 9:15 in the morning.
God.
I mean, better than a cup of coffee, you know, to really get you awake and in tune with the day,
Sure.
but
Yeah, this is a new service.
definitely not
No, that's
something
not
you
how
wanna.
you do it. That's not. That's
DoorDash and Slash. It's the
no. I
latest.
cannot.
Uh,
Why do we use humor for trauma, you guys?
Grubhub and Mug. You haven't
I
heard of
can't. I'm
it?
I
done.
think I saw a meme earlier today where they just call it spicy memory, not
Oh
trauma.
yeah, core memory, spicy memory.
Oh, that's what I'm gonna start calling my niece in puberty. Spicy memory.
Hmm.
Well, first off, thank you for sharing and being so open with that. I know that trauma is different for everybody. And so
Mhm.
thank you for being open and honest and sharing that experience, because I think hearing other people's experiences in life is super helpful to help how we, as humans connect with each other. So thank you. Um, and then also doubly thank you for that piece of call the
Yeah.
lawyer first, because as you heard in the first part, Bex and I were like, yeah, is there just a workers' comp person back there for you waiting? So no,
Yeah.
and first things first, call a lawyer, apparently.
That
Yeah.
makes sense why it's a cliche in so many procedurals of, the rich people are always the ones that are like, I'd like to speak to my attorney because they know that it's like, and that's the secrets that we all got to pass down is, the common person should know that there is representation. I mean, you had a friend, but I don't know if there's like pro bono representation available or how you even have to start then thinking about the dollar signs of like, what is your upfront cost of your own accident, or it's not your fault.
Yeah, it's actually kind of great that you bring up that component because it's something that a lot of people don't think of when they, you're always so scared that you can't afford an attorney. And then you don't do it because you're like, I don't want to go down the wrong place and then be in debt because I thought I was trying to better myself. But in like, I think it was like 1915 or 1916, somewhere before the 1920s and only shortly before, because of some work that was going on in California, and they saw the benefits of this like insurance and this workers' comp insurance just realm. They passed it federally that every state had to have to some extent a workers' compensation board, which had to
Mm.
report to the labor board for the United States government. Um, but eventually those boards were like, every single state needs at least a board or a committee of pro bono workers' comp attorneys. And so you can always get a pro bono workers' comp attorney in any single state that you're in.
Wow.
And it ranges. Obviously, the state board ones are probably going to be your lower end attorneys that are really trying to just win a case and get that backing, but sometimes you can find a really good one. And then also a lot of the big wigs, honestly, if they know they're a big wig and they're going to absolutely demolish and protect you, they're just going to do the work and charge you a higher percentage, but they'll still do it pro bono. And
Hmm.
it's something really important because it's not like an injury attorney where you're going to have to pay them $25,000 just to make sure that you can get to a protected space or anything like that.
So this is done on contingency then. You're saying,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to hire you like Rebecca Esquire, Rebecca Buckley Esquire. I'm going to hire you. And if I win, you can have like 20% of my winnings. And I think that's really important information to have. And I think that's true for a lot of cases. I think when you sue in general as well, a lot of the law firms will do it on contingency. And what you were getting at is some might charge you 5%, some might charge you 50% if they're a really really big law firm that has a lot of resources. So I did not know that there was lawyers out there that was doing that. I mean, it makes sense, but I had never really thought about it.
Yeah, and honestly, the going rate, I think federally, when I went through my case almost 2 years ago, it was 2021 when it happened to me. The going rate for an attorney was about 17%. And that ranged as far as, like you said, Jackie, like there were some attorneys that were literally charging 3%, and then there were some attorneys that were like charging 46%. So there's a big range. But I still, even if you can't find a good attorney, get one because it protects you to many extents, even if your injury, it has like no legal grounds for suing, or anything along those lines. It's just good for protection, to honestly protect you from not being like overburdened by the hospital, not being overburdened by your work, so that you can heal and actually get through the injury.
But that's even helpful to know, just like concrete terms, like at this time, 17%, don't, bring that up. If you hear a higher rate, bring that up. Say, hey, why is this, ringing alarm bells? That's a little high. Like, because we're, living in a society. It's like, yeah, you need protection and help. And it's great that we've had progress and advancements, but who is ever prepared for these moments? It's
lawyers. That's
literally lawyers. That's what they're there for.
Exactly.
So when you woke up, then you had a friend, you got in contact with them, and they gave you some advice. And then what was the steps that you took from there?
Yeah. And so pretty much how it happened at first was I wake up, I'm literally on the residuals of every single drug that you could get in a hospital. And the first thing I thought was, let me text my friend, because since I was in the ICU, I couldn't be making active phone calls. That's also another thing, is a lot of the time you can't take a phone call inside of a hospital. So if you go to the hospital, always double check, because I almost did get in trouble for making a phone call instead of the ICU. So always text when you first wake up, especially because it documents everything. But I texted my friend. She said instantly, request your medically appointed social worker. Because every single person that goes into a hospital, unless it's literally like a self-caused personal injury, is pretty much provided a medically appointed social worker. And those are the people that like check on the kids when they suspect it's like child abuse or elderly abuse or
domestic violence.
They're normally the domestic violence people. And you never really think about that, but they're
also crazy.
There to help
You're
you.
A social worker and you didn't even know that there were medically appointed social workers.
It was baffling to me. I was like, there's someone here that's supposed to do that, but they don't just help with the abuse things, they help with the good things too. But so my friend said, tell your doctor that you don't want any medical care, you don't want to speak to anybody until you have your medically appointed social worker, and then look at these forms. I'll search for a list of actively working attorneys. And so she got me a list of actively working attorneys. I called my medically appointed social worker. Her name was Catherine. I won't share her last name though. Catherine. And I absolutely loved Catherine. Catherine came in so clutch for me. It was ridiculous, and I am very appreciative of the support she gave. But the reason why the timing of doing that is very important, and you need to do it as soon as possible, is because as soon as you wake up after surgery, your medical team will report that and the medical records to the hospital. And then when you are under a workers' comp case, if your employer is malicious to any intent, as soon as it happens, they call a medically appointed workers' compensation account manager, I think is the term she gave me. I know there's a lot of other terms that people will use.
Accountants. Never trust the accountants.
Not even an accountant. She could not do numbers to save her fucking life. This woman was
just
horrible.
An account manager.
She's like a project manager. She's the one who says like, this is my case, and then like, I don't know, whatever she does with it. Like, but so she's the one protecting
the company
on the other side.
They're so protecting you.
Yeah, but
yeah, it's
heavy
it's
quotation
for the
marks.
Company.
Yeah, I mean, like, I mean, and like, there is, most companies' best interest is to protect you, right? Like their best interest is to take care of you at this point. Regardless of whether they're at fault prior to what is happening, the second that you are actually injured, it is their best interest to make sure that you are taken care of at the hospital, so on and so forth. It just makes them more liable. But they're taking care of your best interest because it's in their best interest.
It makes them look better.
Yeah, they're not like, oh, like and some companies may be like, oh, I'm so concerned. Some companies may be like, yeah, I don't really care. So that account manager gets to come in and be like, hey, it might be in your best interest to care.
And they are the one that resets the 0 days since last workplace incident ticker marker, so they get
Pretty,
the honor
it's
of
literally it's that person pretty much. They're the one that reports everything to like the HR and is like, this is how you've been doing as far as injuries go. Anyway, but so mine, for my case, her name was Deborah. Deborah was like Hayton's, because she was a hating person. She was Satan's pretty much like big toe walking on the planet. She was an evil woman that was very mean.
Okay, Deborah, we see you. We know who you are. We're coming for you.
Yeah.
Okay, we're not coming for you. This is not a threat, but
No.
we do not like you as an individual, and we do not wish you good. We do not wish you good.
Yeah. But so Deborah, I get a call.
Debbie Downer, are you kidding me? Insane. Okay, sorry. Anyway,
she did actually not like being called Debbie. One of my doctors accidentally did it, and she like interrupted and was like, "My name is Deborah."
Good, because my mom's name is Debbie, and my mom is delightful. Her full name is Deborah, but we don't call her that.
Debbie. So. Oh, she's the greatest. Yeah, that's a real indicator.
Yeah. But so she calls me on like my bedroom phone like an hour after I had called Catherine, and my friend had gotten me the list of attorneys, and I've been speaking with my doctors and everything else. And she sounded super sweet. She didn't really disclose, well, she disclosed to me her like medical company's name, but it was like BioTrue Protection. And so in my head, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is probably like somebody coming with some scans or something.
Yeah, like waste management. Are you getting rid of like medical waste? That's what, like.
And so I was just like, okay, yeah, I'll see you in an hour. And so she shows up and she just starts talking to me like specifically about the case, if I thought I had been doing anything wrong at work. And then as soon as
what were you wearing of workplace stabbings?
Literally. And like as soon as that happened, I was like, I'm stressing. I think I need a breather. Can like you leave me alone for a second? And the second she stepped out, I grabbed my phone and I'm like, I'm in a bed and it's not close. So I'm like reaching like for it. Because I was like, who the hell is this crazy lady? Why is she wanting to know so much about me? I thought she was like a nurse that has my medical record. And I called Catherine. And Catherine, and this is why I love the medically appointed case manager when you were in a hospital. Sorry, social worker, not case manager. The case manager's the mean one. The social worker, she comes sprinting to me. She was there in like 5 minutes. And then as soon as she came storming in, Deborah comes walking in and is all like, oh, are you good to go again? Someone came into your room. And I was like, Catherine, this is Deborah. Deborah, this is Catherine. I was like, Catherine, Deborah's making me feel very uncomfortable and I don't know who she is. And then Catherine went like a mama bear on her.
We love you, Catherine.
Yeah, no,
Catherine
literally.
Catherine the Great. Come on.
And so Catherine was like, I need to know who you are now. I will call security if you do not disclose. I need to know your purposes for talking to my client, and I'd like to see any notes that you've already taken. And so literally, when I think of Catherine, I'm all like, she's kind of the mom I wish I had. My mom was amazing, but goddamn Catherine was crazy.
Yeah. She's a bad bitch.
Catherine came ready. Catherine came ready. She said, let me see those receipts.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so Catherine gets all this information for me and was all like, she is actually an employee for the insurance company that your employer insures for workers' comp insurance. She was like, this is what she's documented. It looks like she's definitely trying to provide information to your employer.
AKA she is sus and half of what she's written down is cap.
And what the fuck is cap?
Catch up, Jackie.
I got everything else.
Cap is lies. Cap is fiction.
Moments like this is when I love to watch Jackie get uncomfortable.
How did we get from lies to cap?
Ask the youth, Jackie. Get on the TikTok.
Dear youth.
Actually,
what I do is call Alex. People. That's what I do. It's legitimately my youth.
Yeah, I mean, I'll admit, even I'm aging out of the complete understanding of what that word implies. I just know that it means like, damn straight, bruh. So... Jackie taking notes.
Yeah, Jackie feverishly chicken peck typing.
Well, I typed in what does cap mean, and it just showed me a picture of a baseball cap. So,
Well, don't you feel smart now?
no, I feel even dumber as usual.
See, I'm far enough removed that I don't ever know what it comes from, but I just context clues.
Google doesn't know. So you know what? I feel better.
Urban
Right on Urban
Dictionary.
Dictionary. Yeah, see.
No, it says it's the origination of is unknown, but they think it's hip hop, hippity hoppity.
It's always hip hop culture.
Mm-hmm. Okay, all right, back to where we were. It's Cap. We love Catherine. Catherine.
Yeah,
but not
Catherine,
Deborah. Deborah's
not
full of
Deborah.
cap.
Yeah. And so Catherine told Deborah that she was not allowed to speak to me for the rest of my medical stay because I said I didn't want to see her. So Deborah actually Catherine, too many people in the story. Catherine blocked Deborah from even coming into my wing of the hospital.
Blocked.
That's such a bad bitch move. You can't even come in this wing. You can't even come in. You can't even see him.
I mean, Deborah was psycho. They can't legally block her from calling, texting, or emailing me and requesting updates without a no contact order. So, and the hospital can't obviously issue that. That's like another legal thing. And so Deborah's sending me text messages. She's leaving me voicemails, calls, emails, the whole shebang, trying to get information from me. And to some extent, she was legally, because she was the insurance agent overseeing my coverage. She did get issued reports from the hospital, but she wasn't allowed to ask me those leading questions that they can build a case against me.
Also, like, you've just been traumatized. Like, it now is not the time. Like, maybe had she come in a couple days later when you had a little chance to heal, she could have gotten some information from you. But when you come out the gates hard like that, no, absolutely not.
Exactly. And that's why the biggest thing I can stress in this video is like I said, regardless of the severity of the injury, call an attorney and you're a medically appointed social worker as soon as you can. But so moving forward, my stay in the hospital was 5 days. They released me eventually, took me off all the machines. I was good to go home, but I needed some medical assistance from friends and family. And as the first day that I am home, I wake up in my bed finally. I get a text message from Deborah saying that she needed to see my entire medical record for my future care now that I'm out of the hospital. And at this point, my insurance had already been completely maxed out. And so, because for my position, my employer thought I would only need $10,000 worth of medical
We've
coverage
already
and
exceeded
workers'
10
comp.
grand.
Oh yeah, my final medical bill leaving the hospital was a little under $400,000.
Yeah, the ambulance alone is more than 10 grand.
Yeah, the amount of machines and just my
you
bed
could
every
become
night.
a doctor and operate on yourself for that amount.
We should call you Dr. Alex now. You have paid for it.
Okay, I have a bachelor's degree, but please.
Yeah, honorary bachelor's in doctor.
But nightly it was almost $40,000 just to have all this stuff turned on. And so
So you were fighting for your life for days.
I mean, I had severe surgery. I stabilized instantly after surgery. It was just a long time for them to feel comfortable with taking me off a ventilating machine to make sure I was breathing properly. So I'm home. I get this text message. I already have my attorney on hand. I can't say his name because he'd probably love the free advertisement. Nick Sheedy, if you live in the greater Sacramento area and you're in a workers' comp case, go to that man. He made my experience 1,000 times better than I could have ever done anything.
Okay, say it again. Nick Sheedy?
Nick Sheedy, Sheedy is his last name.
We got
he
you,
has
boy.
a firm in local Sacramento. Anyways,
if you be bleedy, call Nick Sheedy.
Literally. So I messaged Deborah and I was like, I don't know any of this. It's my first time waking up. Can you give me some time? And she leaves me this absolutely vile voicemail, like yelling, saying that she needs this stuff, insurance will not go through, etc., etc. And I have like a mental panic attack. And I call my attorney and I tell him, and he just makes this like, oh, cool. And like was like, I'll call you right back. And he calls me back like 4 minutes later. And was just like, oh, I absolutely just grilled her, and said that you're fired. You are no longer legally allowed to talk to my client. He has an attorney. All communications will have to go through me. And honestly, that
Bye.
saved my day, because it's so easy to say the wrong thing when you're going through
Yeah.
workers' comp, and especially at
Yeah.
the severity of my case. Like, obviously, we were going to go and sue and go to court,
Yeah.
for the basis of providing an unsafe work environment. And like that's kind of where I do want to like change gears into like what can actually lead you to this. So like workers' comp is pretty much considered anything that your employer could have done to not have an injury happen. And if you can prove that they could have done something reasonably to prevent that injury, you can go and file a workers' comp claim and even go into a lawsuit based off of that. It's dependent on how much money you get. For example, like if they didn't provide you training on running a nail gun and you said you never used a nail gun, that's your own self hurting yourself compared to having like a client hurt a staff, like in my case. So it's
Does that
very case
include mental
dependent.
stuff?
Yeah. If technically if you become triggered to develop a severe mental illness such as like like bipolar disorder or something along those lines, PTSD, due to a work environment, you can even go onto workers' comp for that.
I have some people I'd like to call real quick.
I know. I'm like, Jackie.
not my current job. Not my current job. The joke was about past employment, but yeah, that's.
I will admit the mental case, it's pretty expensive, and there's very few attorneys that do the mental side of it because it's so hard to prove that you didn't have the mental problems or the mental health problems before the work environment.
That's
And it's
actually
almost
the.
yeah, like you said, Jackie, about the dental thing.
Yeah, it's the same thing. Like, because it's so hard to prove that you didn't have it beforehand, that you're like, I'm sorry, I wasn't walking around going to a psychiatrist because I was normal before this, and you're the one who made me crazy. Yeah, it's kind of unbelievable what the burden of proof is for somebody who has been aggrieved in a lot of situations.
Yeah. And so, but moving kind of back more into like my specifics. So like once Nick had fired, Deborah was, well, not fired, said no, I mean pretty much fired, because she could no longer contact me and her job was to contact me. So she's terminated.
Wow.
And like that just made me feel so good that I was protected to that level. And my attorney pretty much took me through every step pretty much. And so it was nice because his front desk lady, who sadly I think left, her name was Brianna. um she she called me once a week, checked in. If she couldn't call me, she'd send me multiple emails. She'd give me records of my entire things that I needed to complete medically. And obviously it was my own responsibility to file the appointments and everything, but she was like, this is what we need done, yada yada yada, led me through the entire experience. And Nick's firm has been doing workers' comp for years and years, so I got extremely lucky of having a very qualified attorney. But you know, then months and months started to pass, and I'm still in this workers' comp case, and
So
I
are
was
you just
extremely
waiting?
happy. Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, your employer, if they know they're going to lose a case. In my example, I was literally stabbed by one of my clients and we had no security guards or security measures for our building whatsoever. They're like, oh fuck, we're going to lose. So what do? They want to extend the case as long as possible, because they don't care about the money, they care about the image. They don't want it to be public record, because as soon as you make a final decision, it becomes public record. But they don't want to have it be public record that they were sued for this neglect.
Okay.
So by
And
drawing it out, they're hoping you'll drop it or settle for something less.
yeah, they want you, well, drop it completely, because while you're
Yeah.
on workers' comp, they can pay you anywhere. They can pay, it's like 45% to 75% of what you were currently making. And so I was in college. I was a part-time social worker. I was making like $1,800 a month or something like that. And then they started paying me $900 a month. And so they know you can't live off that. And so they try
Yeah.
to just prolong it to get you to drop everything.
Do they get to decide the percentage that they're paying you?
No, it's based on, like, if a coworker assaulted you, you would be paid a higher percentage, because more of the blame is instantly set on the workplace. But if
Interesting.
you injure yourself or a client or someone that technically is not employed by the agency, at least in violent crime cases, then you will be paid a lower percentage, because it's in the gray zone of how much responsibility each person has part of. So
It's just like sucks that in society we have to like tear these things out. Well,
Yeah.
your trauma is more expensive because like it happened by somebody that like you know, like right? Like it's really like stressful and like overwhelming, I'm sure, when you go through that process to like be like, oh, okay, well, because somebody did this, I'm only at 45% and now I can't live all my life.
yeah,
And like, how am I going to figure like, oh man, if it was just somebody else, I could have gotten 5 more. It just seems so like daunting.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I laugh at it because I look back at it now. I'm like, that's fucked, but at the same time, it's not funny. It's not funny at all, because some people get paid the bare minimum, and it's a shitty situation.
We laugh through trauma on this podcast. It's totally normal. Like, I think it's how we survive. So totally we do it.
And is there any silver lining of like, yes, their team is also trying to draw things out, but your team might also have ways to like address that? Or is it pretty much just like they can indefinitely draw a case out?
Well, so every time you're like a judge demands that you submit a form, you have a time period on how to submit that. And so and then if you think there's missing information, you have to submit like a missing information clause. And so the judge will be like, we need this document sent with no specifics, and then your employer will send half of the document and be like, well, you just said this document had to be sent, you didn't say how much of it. And then you file a missing information thing, and then the judge has to say you have to submit every bit of information. And so they play that game. So just to get my employee record, it took my attorney about 9.5 months.
Whoa.
Yeah.
And were you present for all of that stuff, or is like your attorney doing it on your behalf?
I had no clue. Like extra day would go by and I'd lose my shit in my psychopathic ways. I'd be like, "Oh my gosh,
Your
why haven't
trauma
you messaged
response
me?"
PTSD brain had a,
Yeah.
had a realistic and a reasonable response to what you were going through. Yes, okay.
Yeah, and so like I messaged my attorney. I'm like, "Why haven't you responded to me?" And he would be like, "Because I've literally been in court all day for the last 3 days yelling at your employer." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, what's up, Nick? Like, cool."
But I think that's like other super important information to have, that like going through this process, like if you've hired somebody and you trust them, that it's going to take a lot of time and you are going to have to wait. And like if you want something done right, like, you know, I work in business. Sometimes when I'm working with a different team outside of my own company, I have to ask something for 4 or 5 times to be done right. And we're trying to work together, right? So I can only imagine when you're working against it and knowing that not only are you going to have to work through everything that you've been through, but you're going to also have to work through your patience and trying to like wait out the other side as they're waiting you out.
Yeah. And like it's funny though, because the the making you wait thing, and that whole game and antic, it can be completely different from person to person. And you know, I was lucky enough where my building had security cameras, the whole 9 yards. Everything was so high documented. It was very just attorney to attorney behind closed doors in a courtroom. I wasn't that person that was getting followed around by a PI having pictures taken of me being like, did he really get stabbed? And like, I did not have that situation, but there are some people where they legitimately do have that happen to them. And you think that happens only in TV shows, but that happens a lot in workers' comp cases.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's
But
like insane. I listened to a woman who's like a PI who like does that for a living, right? And I've always like heard it onto her side of like, oh, this person is faking, right? But how traumatic would that be if you're not faking and that person's following you around?
yeah, it's like I'll admit, my attorney even told me when I first met with him, he was like let me know if you think you are being followed. And he made it very clear that it is a
Whoa.
possibility. And he was like, if you don't notice anything for about a month or so, he was like, we're probably in the clear. Because
And
right
if you
now is
are
when they're
being
mostly
followed,
going to
you
be
know,
about to know.
stand in front of the window and make it look like you're in pain.
Oh yeah, if they take a picture of you while you're naked, you can sue them. So
Even better.
Jesus, well, they shouldn't be taking a picture of you while you're naked, okay? Like, let's have some boundaries here, humanity. Apparently, we don't.
know. Well, you got to think those people are like there for the times when it's a good thing and they're helpful and they're just, you know.
Everyone has a job to do. I get it, but fuck, there are some jobs that
but
you
don't
have
be a
to
Deborah
question.
if you have to do it, okay?
Don't be a
we don't like
Deborah.
Deborahs.
Yeah. I think that we should get t-shirts made that just say don't be a Deborah.
And I have like the image burned into my hair. She's this old lady with like that was trying to be young and had like platinum blonde silver hair and these big old curls, and she always had one of those like little hard clip books that like you can put files in. And it was like bright purple. I can make a shirt off of Deborah.
Disgusting.
For sure. I have a whole
Let's make
character.
a cartoon Deborah. Wow. Okay, so you're waiting all this time. What happens when you kind of start to know it's coming to a close? Like, how does that all start to play out? Does like Deborah, Kathleen, Nick, does everyone get in the same room and just like wrestle it out?
Yeah, so this is where workers' comp gets absolutely crazy. Is once you get past the waiting game, it is flying faster than any portion of your entire experience. I wake up one day at like 5:30 in the morning to a phone call, and my phone's on do not disturb, so I know it's rather my attorney or I know it's a family member or like a really close friend. And so I wake up and I answer it, and it's Nick, and he says, okay, we've agreed legally to do an AME, which is an appointed medical evaluation, versus a QME, which is when you have like 5 different doctors on a panel review you all at the same time. And it allows for one doctor to fight another doctor and make things better or worse. And so we got to go with that one doctor. My attorney says currently your medical damages are projected at probably taking a lawsuit of about $250,000 to $450,000. And I was like, okay, cool, happy with that. Hang up. I get a call later that day at 2:00, and they say, okay, document's been filed. Your employer is offering a settlement as of now. Gave me a ballpark number, and they always start extremely low. I think their first number, they literally offered me like $15,000 for the settlement, when the minimum for a lawsuit is at least 10 times that. I was like, okay, crummy, here's what I want. Literally 5 minutes later, attorney calls me back. They're offering $75,000. And then I was like, that's still not enough. And then you have to kind of start walking yourself through these moments where my attorney was literally like, listen, you're trying to go into data and engineering. You'll be making 6 figures easily once you're in the industry. This company will fight you for 10 to 15 years. And you won't be able to get off workers' comp pay. You will have to stay on that insurance benefit of $900 a month.
So you couldn't get another job and get off of that? You had to stay on that the entire time?
Yeah, if I got off of it, then they would say that I no longer have a case because I closed my case and I have no other reason to be suing them. And then everything drops mandatorily.
That is the most malicious thing.
I didn't get that part. Like, I thought, like, you were saying that 900 was like, oh, like, you're out of work for 3 weeks. We're going to pay that to you for 3 weeks, not the entire time you have this claim.
Yeah, and if you get, like I said, if you get off of it and you still try to sue them, then the medical people say that it's like insurance fraud.
And then you're getting sued.
Yeah, literally.
Like,
So
Uno reverse.
That is so fucked.
yeah, and that's definitely through like big industry private lobbying on laws, because they want you to stay on there, because then they can put the pressure on even harder. Because unless you're making $500,000, 45% possibly is not going to support you financially in any
No.
other industry.
I'm like trying to do the math for me. I'm like, what, could I live on 45% of my salary? Take
I
home? Is it
mean,
taxed? Is it
What are you
taxed?
supposed to spend? What are you supposed to spend? 40% of your income on your rent?
Yeah, it's like 35 to 40% you're supposed to put on your rent. And when my rent for my unit was already over the $900, luckily I had friends and family and
Yeah,
a good
because who is
partner.
actually attaining that 'cause in housing prices and income gap these days? So
Yeah,
that's already, you have like no money to eat, to live, to like possibly even pay your rent.
yeah, and
And
it's
then if you're already
definitely
that low,
scary.
it's like you don't have a security deposit to, I don't know, you have to spend all your life savings. It could really be such a catastrophic event.
Can you go on disability at the same time?
It's if you are labeled as fully physically disabled, but in my case, I was able to recover physically, and I was suing based off of mental punitive damages and them causing me to be diagnosed with PTSD. And so I was labeled as partially disabled because the reason I wasn't going back to work was for a physical reason. And so it's this weird crossover, but that's also kind of what made things go so fast, is because they know if you are permanently disabled and on disability, you make barely enough that you can't really complain about it to the judge, because you're getting two funding sources. So they're not only responsible for paying, it's also the government at that point. And then they know that they can just play it out, and most likely you're going to drop your case when you are considered permanently disabled and you put on disabilities as well.
Okay, I can't. I know that's going to take me a couple hours to digest, but we were in the middle. Like you were
Oh
saying that this
my
is what your
God.
lawyer was using to kind of say like this. It sounds like he was saying like this might be a D bill that you want to consider.
Yeah, and so he wanted me to take it because in California, at least, as soon as you hit 99,909, all the nines pretty much up to 100,000, it's as soon as it hits that, you have to go to trial. You can no longer settle things out of case. And my attorney told me if you ask for any more, they're just going to offer you $100,000, and then a judge is going to mandate that the case goes to trial instead of settling behind, outside of the chambers. And so I ended up taking the money. My attorney said, uh, it'll probably be 2 to 3 weeks, yada, yada, yada. Just sit back and relax. And then in the next 48 hours, I had a wire transfer to my bank account from the insurance company that I was working with for the full amount. And the nice thing is that workers' comp is not taxed on any level, because the money that they provide to you comes directly out of the insurance company, as far as the settlement goes, and then your monthly payments while you're on there comes out of taxpayer funds, because they are a branch of the labor board for the United States, so they have tax funds.
Labor board. We were trying to figure out who they were under before the labor board. My other question is, you were throwing some figures around, and you said that you took that. Is that part of like what pays the like the hospitals and the insurance companies and all of that, or is like that like a separate figure that they also have to work, that your lawyer also has to work out?
So that's just that number that I got, that I ended up getting from the case, was just money that my attorney said pretty much, screw you guys, you have to pay him. Every
Mhm.
other dollar I didn't even see directly. I didn't see any checks. I never saw a bill from the hospital. I just got payment receipts from the insurance company saying that this bill in your name has been paid for this person. Settlement and all of my medical bills and hospital bills included over the almost year and a half track came out to being a little over $500,000. And that was outside of about 10 grand of that. It was pretty much all primarily paid from my organization's personal pocket because they maxed out their insurance within the first hour of me being in the hospital.
They should have made better choices all around.
Yeah, and if you're an employer and watching this, always have very high quality workers' comp insurance. It will save your ass eventually.
Or better, protect your employees so they don't get hurt in the first place, and then you never have to worry about any of this. Is really the moral of the story here if you're an employer.
So it was all ultimately covered by the proceedings, the case.
Yeah, I never saw a bill. I never have. When I paid my taxes this last year, I saw no reported insurance or claims or anything.
Because you could have had to pay insurance on it. And that makes
okay. That's so cool. Then the amount, it wasn't really about the amount. They're just continuing to pay whatever bills were there.
Yeah,
just to
much.
Interesting.
I mean, they legally have to because they were held at 99.2% of the liability for me being injured.
Who was the other 0.8%?
Myself.
0.8% you were liable. Alex, you took the job. Why did you even say yes?
And that's my follow-up question is do you still believe in this work, and what do you take with you now, I guess, in your
I think that social workers and kind of the nonprofit sector and the additional services for the community to provide is something that's absolutely necessary for functionality in American society. We wish the cities could do it all, but they most of the time cannot. So to any current social worker, you're a godsend. You do hard work, but also at the same time, make sure that you feel safe because 90% of the clients at my organization, they loved us and were very sweet to us, but they also had heinous crimes on their permanent record. A lot of them were sexual assault attackers, I should say, in no layman in the sense that they are considered rapists, they're considered murderers, and things along those lines. And it's a very severe case. And because we provided a service to them originally, they were all very, very friendly, but things can change and it's important to have security. So make sure if you're a social worker that you at least feel safe in your workplace. You are doing an amazing job that the world needs, but don't risk yourself over helping the community.
I mean, yeah, I think you're totally right. I've worked in places that did social work as well, and I have seen, I worked in a safe house at one point and I felt very safe there, right? There was a level of security that is built in. And I've worked other places that I felt less safe. And I think as an employee, it's hard to voice that, right? And to say hey, this, this is my first job, or I'm really trying to make it in this career. I'm new here, whatever it may be. And you kind of keep your opinions to yourself about your safety. It could really end differently if you don't voice up and maybe not work for a place that doesn't listen to you if you are voicing up.
Yeah.
Now, we always say, doctors, the first rule, do no harm, but social workers, any kind of employee, the first rule is do not be harmed in the doing of it.
Yeah, literally.
Right. Any last thoughts before Bex and I try to sum this up?
No, I think that's really all of it.
Okay, well, this time my notes are on a Post-it, so
all right, let's stitch it up.
I got friend, arrow, lawyer, arrow, social worker. So
that was my main takeaway. Have a friend who's a lawyer. And that was honestly when I had to sue a policy for being struck by a vehicle to pay for my medical bills. I had a lawyer friend, and that made so much of a difference.
So
but call your attorney. And because of the significant advances we've made in workers' compensation as it is regulated under the Labor Board, you have a pro bono attorney.
You can have a pro bono attorney. You can also hire an attorney that takes a higher contingency rate, and that might have more resources, right?
And at this time, 2021 was the time of this case. 17% was
the average.
The standard.
The important thing to remember is people who take lower contingency doesn't necessarily mean they're a bad lawyer. It might mean they're earlier in their career or don't have a ton of resources. So find somebody that you vibe with.
Yeah, and if you're an early attorney listening to this podcast, try to find a pro bono workers' comp case. It's an easy win.
Listen, we're helping everyone out here. Okay, so you call. Okay, after
and
you
that's
call
how you
your
get
lawyer,
a Catherine. That's how you get a Catherine.
And Catherine is a social worker, and she is a medical social worker. And apparently, when you have any type of medical experience where it could have been something caused to you or you're causing something to somebody else, there's social workers around that can assist you at the hospital. And thank you, people, for doing that.
And then there's account managers who are allegedly working on your behalf as a liaison of the company.
And sometimes they're not great. But you let Catherine and your lawyer figure that all out.
And if you need to, you get her banned from a wing of a hospital, okay?
And fired from your case. So, and we love that. And so then there's a lot of waiting. There's a lot of documentation, doing the right things, making sure that, hey, if something hurts, tell them that it hurts, because you need this documented to prove that you are experiencing what you're experiencing. And then I didn't write anything for a long time. But I wrote AME, which is appreciated medical evil.
I was like, United Arab Emirates. I don't know.
AME.
Appreciated medical.
Anticipated APPCITED. Okay, so you
had a workplace event during this podcast, Jackie. You had a stroke, and we don't know what happened there.
And that's how you want that, though. That's a thumbs up, because the other one, I didn't get the letters. I just wrote other doctor panel 5.
It was the Q review or the other kind of review.
A bunch of, I'm going to say it, lightly cis white old men getting together deciding your fucking future.
Well, what I was thinking was, if I were an attorney, I would be like, okay, well, if we can get the second option where we're forcing a panel, we simply hire one of our doctors to go there and neg their case the whole time. So I was thinking that might be why it's a benefit.
Negging doesn't work in court, and that's all totally illegal. What you just said, if this is why you're not a lawyer.
And this is me. Please call me the lawyer.
And then hopefully at the end, after you've done all this waiting and documenting, things go quickly, and it sounds like your lawyers get in a room and do the thing that I've always really wanted to do. Like, I'm a decent negotiator, but I haven't gotten to like fucking hardball ever. And it sounds like your lawyers hardball it for you. Try to come up with a figure that they think is reasonable for your experience, and then they get you that payout.
That payout. That's what you need.
Okay, now can we be workers' comp labor board superintendents?
I would give you now a solid 9, 100%.
Yes!
Like, not 100%. I would certainly give you a 9. There we go. That's what I should have said.
Okay. You know what? When people give us a 10, I never trust it.
Yeah.
I never trust it. I feel like they're just trying to make us feel better. And I take a 9. Because we shouldn't be lawyers yet, Bex, but we're close.
Not yet, but once we figure out our client base, we're going to be unstoppable.
Email us at we'reexpertspod.
We will represent you in a court of law.
I've created monsters at this point.
You knew that years ago.
We are certainly happy that the delightful person you are is, here on the other side of it. And thanks for sharing this information. I feel like it was it was very useful. You certainly can appreciate what that information would have meant to you to have it at the time too. And see, it sounds like you had a lot of lucky turns, as well, as hard as is to say in the, against the context of an unlucky event.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to say our other guests aren't useful, but I will say that I feel like this is on like a potential of usefulness, far more useful than the ghost hunting advice that I got. Like,
Yeah.
that was a good time. I'm never going ghost hunting. This is the information that, like, you know me. I like having it. I like knowing what to do. I like having a plan. When I was Pride director, I had a long plan of what happened in emergencies. Like, I just like to know what to do, and I feel like, now I could navigate a lot better if something ever comes up, and hopefully it doesn't. But
Yeah, I feel like it's something that when it happens to you, you're like, why can't I call my parents? And they know, like, exactly, like, when you're a kid, you can always call your mom and she knows how to fix something. And then this happens to, and you call your mom and she's like, oh, workers, what? And
she's like, call a lawyer.
yeah.
Alex, anything that you want to, well, yes, thank you again on behalf of myself and the pod and the listeners. Like, this was awesome. What is there anything you want to plug? Anything else you want to say? Any messages that you want to share with besides Catherine and our boy Nick? Those are our plugs.
Yeah, I mean, like, honestly, something that I learned is like always advocate for companies that work in the legal field that, like, end up doing a good cause. Always help them out, refer them, because there are some that truly care about you. They're not attorneys because they want to make money. They're attorneys because they want to help people that they know are being, targeted legally, and with the law to make, to go through these sufferable experiences. And then also, know the law yourself, because this was one of those moments where I didn't know any of the law, despite it's like 90% of the workforce doesn't know any of their workers' comp rights and will need to hire an attorney. So, learn the law, support good law, committees and firms, but don't get corrupt. Don't use the law in a bad way.
Yeah, we're good people on this podcast. We're doing good stuff.
Yeah. Don't make it harder for the people who actually need the service by discrediting the faith of the service.
I'm with you. All right. Sandra Saunderson, which is my nickname for you.
I was like, ooh.
Who is this guest?
Sudden new guest appearance at the very end. Who is this?
And now our second guest. Thank you so much for joining us and coming on the show and being vulnerable. I know that we've had like a lot of episodes that share like some heavier topics. Like, this is more of a comedic podcast, I would say, but these topics like are real and do need to be discussed, and people do need to understand, like you were just saying, be educated. Well, our listeners just were. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was definitely a good experience, and I wish I could be an expert for you guys more often.
Oh, we'll have you back. You're a little next time you
famous famous last words.
All right, let's go be experts.
Let's do it. That was great, and that was the show. Thank you everyone for watching, and we hope you stay curious.
If you enjoyed this video, watch our other videos here on YouTube, or you should listen to the episode on We're Experts Now podcast. Bex, where can they find us?
You can find us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, like Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and iHeartMusic.
And what if they want to talk to us?
If you have ideas for something you want us to investigate, send us an email at we'reexpertspod@gmail.com. That's wereexpertspod@gmail.com.
Great job on that spelling.
Ooh.
A+. Do you do this professionally?
I believe we're both doing it professionally right now.
Wow. People should know about this.
I completely agree. And you can find us on Instagram at We're Experts Now Pod.
Thanks again. And if you enjoy the show, subscribe and comment, and do not forget to leave a 5-star tip.
That's a great idea. Are you a podcast expert?
I think we both are. I think
we're experts now.
This has been a Just Being Better Media production.